welcome to Framework, the only official Carthonasi fan cast. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as usual, is John Bernhard.
Hi, I'm John Bernhard. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited we're getting back this Bioware Omnibus series that we started, like, God knows, a year and change ago.
Yep.
We're finally getting to the game, the game that made us actually want to do this. We had to take a year detour through Baldur's Gate and sort of into just Dungeons and Dragons lore as well. But that all felt somehow essential as background for this game, which is the Baldur's Gate sort of system, the cribbing from Dungeons and Dragons, like combat system, character creation system, general, alignment, all that stuff, the stats, and applying it to the Star Wars universe. Did I say the game is called Knights of the Old Republic? I think I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know. Like, we're talking about this game, which is just like a legendary game now. And this is something that, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have never heard of this game, but at the same time, there are certain circles where this is one of the most significant video game releases of all time, like on par with like a Mario 3, or this is a legendary game.
It's a very important video game. It's also, along with its sequel, Knights of the Old Republic 2, like my favorite bits of Star Wars media outside of the original trilogy.
I mean, I think it compares quite favorably to the original trilogy. I mean, when you're saying best overall Star Wars thing, the argument can be made for these.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's not as dependent on the original trilogy as, say, the sequel trilogy is.
Of course.
For it to be comprehensible in any sense. You might be able to introduce somebody to the prequels before they've watched the original trilogy, but I don't think you could just watch the sequel trilogy and really be sucked into it without having seen the originals. Maybe, I guess you could play Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR as it's abbreviated, and you may just use so as not to continue using that mouthful of a name.
Sure.
I think you could probably play this and be without much Star Wars knowledge. It presumes a certain amount of knowledge of the Force. Jedi, what those are.
Who's playing this without Star Wars knowledge, though?
Exactly.
I mean, it's okay. It's a formative franchise in everyone's life, and we can't escape it no matter what. So, of course you're coming in. If you're playing is this 30 years old? No, it's a 20-year-old video game, excuse me, based on Star Wars at this point. I feel like you know what you're getting into. It's the biggest IP in the world, I guess. And yeah,
it is almost a thing where it's reaching like a zombie movie these days has to sort of wrestle with the idea of, okay, so are we saying that this takes place in a parallel universe where no one's ever heard of a zombie before? And that's become harder as time goes on to to figure out how to deal with that in a smooth, organic way.
Okay, the point is, this game is of a certain stature for sure, yes. and deservedly so. This is one of the best games ever made, in my opinion, and I think that if it's probably a reasonable enough assumption that that's on the short list for a lot of people. It's one of those games. It created the American RPG. Games. Yeah, in some ways, like until this was a major turning point for me, a Rubicon to cross for American RPGs. Up until this point, I don't think I'd liked any, not computer games. They were, and that includes Baldur's Gate, I'm afraid. We talked about that in those, but I was all about JRPGs, all about Final Fantasy, or what's the other one? The
Phantasy Star.
I did play Phantasy Star. It wasn't the best, but I played the shit out of it.
Earthbound,
Chrono Trigger. That was the one I was.
Chrono Trigger's fantastic.
And very used to the play style of the JRPG and the turn-based. This was the first game that delivered on that level for me. That was just purely an American RPG and intellectual property, no less. Like this, tie-in games sucked at this point completely. They probably still kind of suck, as far as I know, but
more often than not, yes.
Yeah, but this one is just, it's a Star Wars game, and it's one of the deepest, most thought out RPGs to ever hit the market. That's unprecedented.
Speaking of tie-in games, the story goes that BioWare, the game studio that made this, was offered to do a direct this game was released in parallel with the prequels, like in the
Right.
middle of the prequel run, and their choice was to make it an actual adaptation of Attack of the Clones, like a straight tie-in game
Oh
with
my.
that, or do their own thing. And they chose, I mean, what just one of the best decisions in video game history. They said, no, we want to do our own thing. So we'll take the Star Wars IP, but we're going to take it 4,000 years in the past, which is sort of a genius thing that you can do with Star Wars because it's already in the opening crawl that it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And because of that, time is very sort of muddy, and you can have almost all of the same like technology in the original Star Wars movies available to us thousands of years earlier, but be disconnected from continuity, such that you don't have to do any servicing of the Skywalkers,
Yeah.
or the Palpatines, but we get all the aesthetics, you get, and you get some new ship designs or whatever, but you get lightsabers, you get the same alien races, you get Wookiees and Hutts and whatnot. You get to reuse a lot of the Ben Burtt's, sound design, which is, I think we've discussed in prior episodes, the secret sauce that makes Star Wars the fictional universe that
Mm-hmm.
sort of towers above all the others. And because you're not sitting in the shadow of all the Skywalkers and the Palpatines and all their shit, it allows you to really make this story feel like your own, and also feel like your story here is the like defining epic story of this time. You're not
Yeah.
you're
Well,
not Rosencrantz or Guildenstern,
and it is, I think, the only Star Wars media of any kind to really pull that off in a way that equals the original trilogy. That it really does present something that is its own epic, iconic storyline that hits a lot of similar beats to that original trilogy, but still feels completely original in and of itself, and completely surprising and revealing, and deeper than you might have originally imagined in the way the original trilogy is. And
yeah.
no one else has hit this mark like ever
It
after.
hits that mark again
Yeah,
better than the sequel
like,
trilogy, which still kind of feels
certainly.
like it's just working in the shadows of the originals, and it's an addendum. It's almost an afterthought to the big
Yeah,
epic story of that time because it's stuck in the same era. It can't escape it too much. The Mandalorian can't escape from
right.
that knowledge that you just carry around, that okay, this is not one of the bigger events of this time. Uh,
And this successfully is the biggest event of this time. And
yeah,
not,
no, absolutely.
it is that kind of epic level storytelling that it was just hard to do, and they've almost abdicated doing correctly in the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy. It's, well, they try anyway, but like it doesn't even come near as good. And they pulled this off in one game, which I guess isn't fair. I mean, it's probably a 50-hour game, so I guess that
Yeah, it's a big ass game.
that is the advantage of being a video game. You can take your time and really get into a thing. BioWare certainly figured that out right around here, I guess. Yeah. That
Yeah, but the other thing it does, this turning point for me between from Baldur's Gate to here, is this is
yeah,
where it sort of the promise of RPGs, that going back to playing Final Fantasy on
right.
Super Nintendo, what I always loved about that, but the hardware could never quite deliver, was the idea of, okay, at its best, this makes me feel like I am playing a good, like a fantasy movie or a fantasy novel.
Yeah.
And Knights of the Republic, the graphics are clunky. And some of the mechanics are clunky by modern standards. When you go back and play it today on my Xbox One, I'd pop in my old, original Xbox disc, and it still works somehow.
Yep.
Yay for backwards compatibility. But they are good enough that you can see people, differentiate characters based on their look. Their mouth moves along with what they're saying in a way that it feels like playing a Star Wars movie. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of everything I wanted from video games from the time I was 6.
Yeah, this sold me an Xbox. This very game, I was just like, oh well, shit.
Same.
I guess I need to get an Xbox because I'm playing that game. It was worth it. It was 100% worth that expense, because this is, yeah, like you said, I felt like this was a game I'd been waiting for my whole life when it came out. Like that it achieved these things that made you feel like you did when you're watching Star Wars, as a child, or any really in-depth good movie, or fantasy series. That's a good way of thinking of it, as like a fantasy novel, a series of those, like reading the Game of Thrones books back before it became such a
What?
weird cultural institution,
Are you avoiding Lord of the Rings for a particular reason? Like that seems like the natural
yeah,
pitch
that one, sure, any of them, a good fantasy series, and getting into the world and the world building of that becomes a real thing here. I mean, it's present in Baldur's Gate, but I don't know, it feels more rewarding to dive into here. It's more user-friendly, certainly. Like, I want to hear what everyone has to say about everything in this game. I want to go talk to the fish guy who, is the law administrator on the water planet, and see the entirety of how their legal process works. Like that sort of thing. I think that, I don't know, it built a completionist streak in me. Games like this, I can point at this one though as being one of the formative, like, I have to do everything in the games.
Well, I think if I can call forward here to years from now, if we're ever getting to the later Bioware, Mass Effect and Dragon Age sequels, the completionist thing will eventually, grow too big and too hard. But here, this is a nice, big, expansive world that feels like you got plenty to explore, but also it is sort of possible to 100% this game. You can get your arms around it just barely, even though it's a big armful.
Size wise, this is about ideal, actually.
I think so.
I don't want much larger than this. There are exceptions, but for the most part, I think something that takes 50 hours to max is quite enough in most cases.
Indeed. I think so. Maybe as when a college student, when I first got this game, I had more time that I could have thrown into it. But as a married father in my I guess I can't fairly say mid-30s anymore. I guess I got late 30s. But 40 hours is a good, it's a good return on my investment for a game. Yeah, pretty expensive game, but not so much that I get lost completely in it.
I mean, this is, even now, I do feel like this is kind of irresponsible, me talking to this fish guy for so long.
I've got a human that I should be talking to in the next room.
Yeah.
Oh, but the fish guy, he talks in a complete fish dialect, which is one of the great things that they do. I mean, certainly when you're playing this game for 50 hours, you notice that a lot of the alien language dialogue is on a loop. So you're going to hear the Hut or the Twi'lek or whoever say the same phrases over and over, even as you're reading the subtitles. Saying different
Twilight
things.
Phrases are really the Twi'lek phrases. You get so used to the Hitucha, all those.
Yeah, exactly. But there's probably 15 different alien languages in this, and it goes such a long way towards establishing that Star Wars feel. The Wookiee, you can have a long conversation with a Wookiee and he's going to howl every word at you. Honestly, on Kashyyyk, it gets to be a bit much. Everybody's just roaring at you for hours on end.
It's the best. I love Kashyyyk. Yeah, but it's all here though. Everything that's good about Star Wars is here. It's amazing how much they pulled off here. Okay, so should we start on it, or how do we even wrap our hands around it?
You mentioned that this is a little more user friendly than Baldur's Gate for sure.
Oh man, yeah.
So that starts with just playable, and that starts with the character creation. It's a lot more basic, but I think it's a good thing. Is it's so easy to get bogged down and take 3 hours to make your character in a Baldur's Gate game, especially when you know that you're going to be stuck with that character for 60 or 80 hours, whatever that one is. But this one, you got 3 possible classes to choose from. You can be a male or female, but you have to be human. There may be mods for that now, because really there's not a reason why your character couldn't be a humanoid alien.
That'd be fun. Do the whole thing as one of those Athorian guys with the hammerhead. That's
humanoid. I mean, you gotta fit in the armor, But you could be, I don't know, you could be a Twi'lek. You could maybe even be a Deveronian. That's the devil guys, right?
Is that what it sounds right? The Devilronians or what? Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, you use the same stats from Dungeons and Dragons. So at least if you have familiar with that system, you can port that over.
Always a surprise. You're like, oh, I'm doing Constitution and Charisma modifier. Okay. Yeah. I mean, Bioware's kind of shameless about that at this point. We talked about this before. It's crazy to me they can legally just do that.
Yes, it's crazy to me that's open source. Apparently, like charisma and intelligence and wisdom as the defining characteristics of a personality is not copyrighted. But anyway, uh, and instead of having to choose between all sorts of different fighters and rogues and magic users or whatever, you basically got soldier, scoundrel, which is your skill guy, or half and half. Those are your choices, and you're pretty much off. They've also like the inventory system is way streamlined from Baldur's Gate. It's still a bit unwieldy as any RPG gets to be, but it's not too terribly tedious in this one.
For an old game, for a 20-year-old game, you can make sense of it real fast, and being optimized for consoles helps too. I think that makes it simpler. And it's just it's a pain in the ass sometimes to negotiate and maneuver, but it's doable. It's doable, like in a way that I just did not find Baldur's Gate to be. It becomes overwhelming. And this one, you can take the time, you can figure it out, and it will pay off. This is a major change for the better that makes these things so much more accessible, more easy for me to really get lost in, back then and now.
Yeah, and on the same token with that, it's the map areas are like on the smaller side compared to a lot of RPGs. Baldur's Gate, not least of all, where you can sort of like it's a bit more on rails. There's not like a ton of just pure open world. Here is like a blank ass map that you can just sort of wander through. You're always in tunnels or pretty narrow areas. It's not there's not places to explore, but you can tell pretty easily, okay, I've been here before. I need to go down this hallway now because I haven't been down that one yet. And I guess when you have to move between maps, there's like a loading screen, which takes a couple of seconds, which can be tedious for modern standards. But I actually prefer, more graspable, smaller chunks than just walking into a new area in Baldur's Gate and knowing I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes walking up and down and just trying to uncover every bit of shadow on that map.
You can always tell, like, okay, there's going to be points of interest pretty much any direction I go. It's not going to get expansive and large. I guess there's a few areas that are daunting, but just in that RPG hub world way where he's like, there's a lot of people I got to talk to before something's going to happen. That's a thing here, I guess, just because it's such an old game and they're still figuring this out. They have better maps later, sure.
I suppose, but I think I think that every RPG struggles with that. I don't know if I found one that really nails that entirely. Maybe Mass Effect 2 does the best job of streamlining things.
Pretty good high water mark there. Yeah. I mean, that one's like an action movie that goes on for 50 hours. It's pretty streamlined, but yeah.
Honestly, that's going to be my big point of praise for that one when we eventually get there. But,
absolutely,
Okay.
It's maybe the best game of the entire Bioware catalog. We'll figure that out.
Honestly,
in a few years,
if we keep getting through these, you're going to hear me say a lot of times, you know what, this might be my favorite video game of all time. Certainly, when Knights of the Old Republic came out, it was my favorite video game of all time.
Without a doubt. I'd never been anything quite this overwhelming. I mean, I got deep into some of those Final Fantasies, like I said, but
certainly
this was on the next level. This was a next generation game at the time. It felt new. It felt innovative.
It felt like they had turned some important corner there, like where the good Final Fantasies, but prior to this, felt like they were video game mechanic systems with story beats interposed every few hours. And this feels like a Star Wars story with video game mechanics laid over it.
As somebody who just complained bitterly about the combat in the Baldur's Gate games when we talked about those, I guess I have to say the combat in this is the weakest part, at least in 2021, or 22, where we are now. But it's so much more playable, so much easier, so much more user-friendly to jump in. And yes, just sometimes a little tedious to play now, 20 years later, and that's it. It's quite doable. It didn't stop me from wanting to max every board. I had to go check every fight and have every encounter. And knew how to do it. It holds up combat-wise. So like all the things that made these difficult are like gone in this release.
Yeah, I mean, the combat maybe isn't as deep as some like strategy video game heads would prefer.
Right.
But it's overall, I think, an improvement to make it simpler versus the
Mm-hmm.
level of complexity we were dealing with previously. And
It's not
you know,
simple by any means, though. I mean, it's
no, well,
simpler. Yeah.
you could turn down the difficulty and just sort of let your guys go up and swing their swords in his face and kill just about anything.
I appreciate the option of doing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the difficulty too here, like, is I think it's pretty well balanced in that. I mean, there's only 3 difficulty settings, which some RPGs have more gradations there.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas I really struggled, like, spent an hour on some not even big boss encounters in Baldur's Gate on normal difficulty. In this one, even on the high difficulty setting, which I prefer to play on with most games, I still like could make it through most encounters in 2 tries. Just, I mean, obviously I've been playing this game for 20 years now. I know the systems, like what to do and all that stuff.
I'll admit my limitations just with the combat system on its own, like how in depth I wanted to get on it. That made me just flip the difficulty around, no matter, just wherever it was. I did not want to get bogged down on the fighting because it is my least favorite thing in the game. But it gives you the option to kind of streamline that, to not have to be like, okay, I have to master this Rancor fight. I'm going to just keep, reloading. It's not like that in this game. You can kind of just go forward. You can kind of just do it at your pace. And, I think a younger version of myself wouldn't have been as cool with that, but I appreciate it as an older guy that I can be like, oh, okay, I don't actually want to have to master this. I kind of just want to experience the story and the characters in the world. So I'm not going to get incredible at this combat system. And it gives me that option. That's all I need.
There's also a nice thing where the monster fights, which are a Star Wars staple, that they be sure to include here. Your fights some Rancors and crate dragons and stuff. That, I mean, now we've seen, which the Mandalorian did 15 years later, 20 years later, and it's a little more common thing. But we've known about this for decades. But they intersperse those there, and almost always at the monster fights, there's a way to trick your way through it, to lay traps or set explosives for it, or just get around it entirely. Some of the harder fights that you can't, sometimes you have to fight a Sith with a lightsaber and there's no way around that. But with the big beasties, you can usually use your special abilities to avoid the fight entirely, which is nice. Or you can have a nice big dragon fight.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it gives you, it's another way of choice that is presented in this game. You can get very detail oriented with orders given to teammates, things like that, and you can plan every move out 5 in advance, or you can just lower the difficulty 1 tick and just hit with melee and what's the big spinning burst one?
The power attack. I mean,
really... the whirlwind where you
flurry.
Spin around with 3 hits. That one I leaned on pretty heavily.
Yes, flurry was the one I used.
Flurry, yes, that one.
That is a nice thing that they here is just stacking orders, where you can pause the game at any time and you can issue one command at a time, or you can press a different button and say, all right, first put up your shield, then throw a grenade, then use your sword, and you can put up to 5 commands in a row, and then you can unpause it and sort of just let the battle play out for a bit while that happens. And because the graphics gotten so much better, this is a complaint I had with Baldur's Gate, that you can kind of do that, or you could give each individual party member a thing and then let the battle play out. But because the graphics are so basic there, I can't look at the screen and tell what's actually happening. I have to read below who did what and did what damage. Whereas I can just watch the battle playing out on the screen and be able to kind of tell who's doing what and who's getting damaged and how things are going.
Huge change. And the timing of it is better. Like Baldur's Gate, it was such a okay, I'm going to have to spend 5 minutes getting everything perfect. Unpause, 3 seconds, then okay, I got to reassess now. Pause again, and this one just flows. You almost forget that you're not just playing an action game sometimes here. Yeah. You can kind of just pop it along that way, and yeah, they stick with this system basically through most of the Dragon Age games, right? Or I guess it's really just the first one that really does this, and they become more
Yeah,
actiony after that. But
I don't know. Dragon Age 2, I think, has pretty
halfway through,
similar.
yeah,
Yeah, pretty similar. By 3, they changed it up a bit.
you can still play 3 this way. I kind of like that
Yeah.
that it lives on in Dragon Age, whereas Mass Effect can just be the action on shooter. But
Yeah.
they're keeping this system and they're improving it. But this is the first time I'd ever played this. I mean, I guess it is just an evolved version of Baldur's Gate, but like this was new to me in KOTOR, and I think to most people who played KOTOR is my impression.
I imagine there's a lot of people that came to this as Star Wars fans and not as, like I said, RPG fans or Baldur's Gate fans. To me, I totally came to it as a Star Wars fan, and then when I started character creation, I was sort of delighted, like, oh, it's the Baldur's Gate system. Nice. I know this one already, and so I was like, oh, I already put hundreds of hours into not beating these prior games, and now I get to use some of that again for in another context. So it retroactively makes Baldur's Gate better in a way.
Kind of, yeah. Well, I mean, yes, in a way, it shows Baldur's Gate on the continuum towards this.
Exactly.
And having played KOTOR made me better at Baldur's Gate when I played it later.
There's one area where I think that the gameplay in KOTOR does not hold up at all, and that is the mini games, which pretty much universally suck.
Pazak doesn't.
Pazak's the best of them. I have adapted or introduced an adapted form of Pazak as a drinking game with my buddies, and let's say college after I was legal. But that's the card game. It's like sort of Star Wars blackjack, but it's a little more involved than blackjack. It's a little fun, but it just sort of sucks your time. The turret mini game, just sort of an essential piece of Star Wars. I'm really glad is there, that there's times when you're flying your ship around your version of the Millennium Falcon, you get attacked by enemy fighters, and you have to get on the turrets and shoot them all down. That is pure Star Wars. I'm glad it's there, but also just the controls on it suck. It's tedious to play out.
Yes. Swoop bike racing isn't much fun either.
Swoop bike racing is awful, man.
Yeah.
Just awful.
I did a lot of it, but yeah, it is awful.
That's the one thing that I never did completionist on. I never did that on other planets. You have to do it on the first planet, and I never did the optional ones after that. It's like, a racing mini game sounds like it would be kind of fun. And even I remember there was a pretty hard racing mini game in Chrono Trigger, but that was a little more exciting, a little more fun, because you were racing against another person on the screen that you had to get ahead of, and try and keep them behind you.
This is time trials.
This is just drag racing. You just go straight forward, try and steer around some obstacles, and then you got a time of 28 seconds, but now somebody else got a time of 27 seconds, so now you have to beat that. And it's it's both difficult and a drag, and I don't like it.
No, it's not very good. It's no Pazak, that's for sure. But I don't know. I like that they throw that stuff in there. I mean, it was something I played a lot when I was young, I remember, and avoided this time through. But what else is there mini game wise? Let's see. I mean, there's puzzles, certainly.
Oh, sure. There's standard RPG puzzles.
Gameplay stuff, though.
It's always a little. There's there's one that I like just as an atmospheric thing, where you find you have your version of the Millennium Falcon that I mentioned as a sort of smuggling vessel that you stole, and you find a mysterious box in it that you're not supposed to touch. And if you do touch, you get transported to a limbo alternate dimension where this alien has been trapped for millennia, and you end up having to play a riddle game to try and escape.
That was crazy. I remember that is an insane thing that happens in this game. I had no memory of that, but coming back to it and seeing that, I was just like, wow, this is great shit. This is their next level storytelling, kind of at its peak. Love those crazy that's like a weird Lovecraft thing that happens. It's great that they just throw all that stuff in there. There's so much great in this game.
it's great. Just that's RPG stuff,
Hmm.
that it's a thing that, you wouldn't include in the streaming series probably,
They
unless
should
you're
though.
really
Yeah.
padding for time. But you throw it in there as just a little, mini
Hmm.
level in a game, and it's great. But you know what? Let's try and go through the actual story of this game.
Yes, it's
I'll
worth
try.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you create your character. You wake up on a ship that is under attack by the Sith. And you are a soldier of the Republic. Some guy wakes you up and says, "Come on, we got to get the heck out of here." So you're trying to escape from this ship while the Sith are boarding it and attacking you. Your first buddy gets offed quickly, but you hook up with another soldier named Cartho Nassi, and you take an escape pod down to this planet of Terrace, where you spend the first probably 6 or 8 hours of this game.
You really get some Bioware mainstays showing up early, like that first huge world where you learn how to
Yeah.
play the game. Probably the most you'll ever spend on a single planet. Like the what's it, the Presidium on the on Mass
Citadel,
Effect,
yeah.
the Citadel, or the Hinterlands in Dragon Age. That first big board. And there's also the first this first squad member who dies right away.
They like to throw that out there. And then you get your first party member, which, Karth is not very super well liked among fandom. I don't mind him. I think he is an interesting enough guy.
I love
And
Karth.
yeah,
Kind of ironically, but he's great.
I like that he's not like a clear Star Wars archetype that, or he's not somebody from the movies,
Right.
that he's got a little bit of Han Solo in that, he carries a pistol and flies the ship, but his personality is nothing like Han Solo's.
No, he's more of a Cassian Andor, really, if you think about it.
A bit more, yeah. But maybe we'll talk a little more about the cast as we go. But
We're
so
gonna
now you're down on Terrace. Yeah, he fills you in that the Sith were attacking the ship because they're trying to get to this special Jedi named Bastila, who was on that ship, and now she's been lost on the escape pods, and you guys got to go find her. So we start doing our first, questing stuff around this planet, where that leads us to gather up a lot of the rest of the supporting cast here. We find out that she's been captured by a swoop bike gang, and so we have to get into the swoop bike race in order to try and win it, so that she's going to be the prize there that they have put
regular
up.
Star Wars stuff there. That's actually very Phantom Menace.
It is extremely Phantom Menace, and to do that, you have to first. You need the help of Mission, the Twi'lek girl that you meet here, and she's got her Wookiee buddy, her Chewbacca, and so you got to help them do some stuff, and then they'll help you do some stuff. They join up as part of your team. You do the big swoop bike race, and then you have a big fight afterwards, and you have rescued Bastila. Now she's on your team, and you've got a Jedi on your team now, but you are still not a Jedi. And now you got to get off the planet, even though the Sith are still quarantining the whole planet, and they've got the whole thing blockaded. So to do that, you got to hook up with a Candrus Ordo, a Mandalorian mercenary, who's one of the better, one of the better characters of this franchise. The Mandalorian's big part of this series, although not at all like really recognizable as what they will be in the Mandalorian TV show.
Well, it is 4,000 years later, so the meaning of what they are does seem to have completely changed in that time, as opposed to Jedi's huts. Those are all the same.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, like, you don't want to mess with too much, so I'm okay with the huts being the huts always.
Now, was this because the Mandalorians were not defined when KOTOR came out, and they could kind of just make shit up for them?
Yes, I think that's entirely what it was.
Yeah.
But it's also just using the license that being 4,000 years away from everything else gives you. That it's like the Mandalorians of the Mandalorian series are today's Egyptians versus the ancient Egyptians. Like, they got some different fashions. It's a different religious beliefs or whatever. And I mean, I think they did it accidentally. That just because there was nothing to for this game when it was made to be reacting to as far as Mandalorians went, and then when they made the show, just it's a video game, so it wasn't held in high regard. Like they had to respect it, so they didn't. But I think that accidentally or not, works to the benefit of the universe overall. I like the idea that the Mandalorians' history was very different than where they ended up later in the
series. There is enough carryover too between them if you squint. I mean, 4,000 years, like 4,000 years ago on Earth, we were what, Precambrian times, like before we had writing. So okay,
no, sure, I mean, it's 2000 BC. We've got I don't know. Ancient Egypt's up and running. Like, that's about it. As far as at least our Western history books teach us. But look, the Mandalorians are a martial culture. They're sort of like Spartans. They're all about just the
thrill of battle. Yes, our God worships us because we kill. That sort of thing. Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, they're sort of the Vikings. Of, of Canis Ordo was the Northmen of Knights of the Republic. But anyway, good voice actor for that guy. He's very engaging. He's like your first evil teammate. Right. Where he's not like aligned with the Sith or the dark side, but he's just like a mean guy. And so
that's right.
He starts throwing off some more friction with the other castmates, which is cool. And he also hooks you up with your version of R2-D2 called T3M4, who is a droid that is a little tin can that rolls around. And he's going to get you into this. You got to break into the military base, steal some codes that'll get you through the blockade, and then you got to go with him to his boss's estate, who's the big crime lord of the planet, and steal his prize smuggling ship, the Ebon Hawk, which is your Millennium Falcon. So you can see there's a lot of things here that are, you're collecting pieces of Star Wars stuff that are very familiar. You get your Wookiee, your R2-D2, and your Millennium Falcon. Mm-hmm. But you also have, I guess, Canderous is vaguely like a Lando figure, except that he doesn't really betray you, but he also never really comes around to being like fully one of the good guys. Like he's your ally, but he stays, mean guy the whole time.
Yeah. It depends how you play it too, I suppose. Is there a way to be too good for Canderous? Is that a thing that you can do? Can you turn him off with your righteousness?
Yeah, well, he'll complain, but he won't leave you. Because even as he's complaining about your righteousness, he's still impressed with your badassness.
Right.
Enough.
The brutality.
He's like, well, right. Yeah, he's like, you're also like, man, you're kind of a drip, but also you're kicking a lot of ass, and you're like gonna have the best enemies, and that's what I'm all about. I want to fight the strongest enemies. So
he has that great line, like light side, dark side, it doesn't matter to me. I'm at your side, or whatever it is.
Oh, that's good. So you bust out of there. As you're escaping the planet, Darth Malak, the big bad Sith villain, the Darth Vader of this game, gives the order to destroy the entire planet. They don't have a Death Star, but he just has his whole fleet just shoot it to death, which is kind of great.
That's right. They just destroy it.
So now we're off. We go to Dantooine, which is a name familiar to Star Wars fans, where you go to the Jedi headquarters there. I mean, it's not Coruscant, but their sort of wartime headquarters on the Outer Rim or whatever. And there's a little bit of hemming and hawing, but thankfully very little, about whether you're too old to be trained as a Jedi, even though you're clearly super talented special boy. And they agree to train you as a Jedi, and you go through a little bit of training stuff, a couple of trials there, some quests on this planet. One of which is to go find this fallen Jedi Juhani, who has turned to the dark side, and you can fight and kill her, or you can turn her back to the light side. And if you do, she will join you going forward as one of your teammates.
Fan favorite Juhani.
Juhani's pretty great for. I think Juhani's for one that's like really optional, that you could go through the whole game without realizing, oh, that person could have joined me.
Right.
Like there's some I don't know, I like her, but we also now sort of get the main story of the rest of the game laid out, where you're sort of like following the footsteps of that Malik and his old master Revan went through when they were Jedi before they turned to the dark side. And you and Bastila are sharing some like visions of what those guys were doing before they turned bad, and of Revan dying when Bastila and some other Jedi confronted him on on a ship, and Malik turned against him and just started shooting up the ship, and Revan dies there. So that's a memory of Bastila that you're sort of sharing with her because you guys are linked by, mystic juju, and
Battle
because
meditation. Yes. Mm-hmm.
because you're linked there, she
is that a dyad? Is that a forced dyad there?
sort of, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's done better here.
Yeah.
It's not as explained as like clearly or dumbly as that, I feel. But
the sequel does have an explicit force dyad, which
it does.
Yeah.
But we don't have time for that.
No,
here.
we don't.
We got a lot of plans to get through still. So anyway, you've been getting some flashback stuff there to sort of put you on the path of finding this artifact.
The star maps that
saying, okay, Revan and Malik found this map here on Dantooine. It has pieces of things that and it points you towards 4 other planets where you can find more star maps. And then they give you your ship back, tell you take your team and go find these maps. And now we're pretty, deep into this game. You're probably 12 hours into this game now, maybe. But you got your lightsaber, you got your ship, and you can choose like fly anywhere you want in the galaxy. And we're finally, this is the point where we're off the rails to a degree, and you get to like kind of choose which order to tackle things into, which is part of the Bioware structure always.
Yeah. I don't know. I always feel like I take the optimal path that they recommend, at least the first time.
Did you feel like they recommended a path here?
Maybe they don't, but there is like an agreed on path that, that if you look up anything online, like this is what you should do, it seems to be everyone does it this way, which is what it's.
So for me, once I've been through it once at least, my way of maximizing it is I go gather up all the possible teammates first is my first priority.
Okay.
So in this case, that means I go straight to Tatooine.
Yeah, Tatooine's first for sure.
But Tatooine's also really hard if you do it first.
Is that not the intended first planet? I always thought it was.
Well, what I do, I go there and buy HK-47, the droid.
Right.
And then once I get him on my team, I leave and go to Kashyyyk and do Kashyyyk all the way through, and then circle back to do Tatooine. Finish the rest of Tatooine.
That would make sense. Yeah. For me, it was Tatooine, Kashyyyk. Those are definitely 1 and 2. Yeah.
So on Tatooine, you land at Anchorhead. Another just good decision making here. Like I said, goes hand in hand with the 4,000 years away thing. Is they don't have you go to Mos Eisley. They have you go to a different part of Tatooine. It's sort of mandatory that we go to Tatooine because it is the Star Wars planet. But it's also like we can do a lot of the Tatooine stuff without doing it in the exact same place and having to show it. Yeah, that place hasn't changed at all in 4,000 years.
Yeah, well, it's everyone knows Tatooine at this point.
Yeah,
it's the sand planet. It's the one with the itinerant hut dwellers, and everyone has to work, and it's a bad place to live, and there's moisture farming, and it's Tatooine. So of course, it is as it always is represented in Star Wars here in this game.
So you find out pretty quickly here that there's problems with the Sand People or the Tusken Raiders, but they're also the only ones who would know how to track down the star map out in the desert wastes. So you got to figure out a way to deal with them. You go to buy this protocol droid that can speak their language, and once you do, he joins your side, and you find out that he's not really a protocol droid. He's actually an assassin droid that is built to, look like a protocol droid, not exactly like C-3PO, but sort of humanoid. He's also like a reddish, orangish color, and but he's like an infiltration unit. So he's actually a pretty good combat companion, and he's also largely like comic relief because he's your second evil guy.
HK is the best character in the game. HK is, I mean, there's arguments to be made, I guess, but HK is the fan favorite, right? This is
yes, of the whole series. The whole Knights Really Old Pro series.
This could be the most beloved Bioware character in the end. I mean, probably not at this point, but he's up there. It is templated. I mean, there's always this character in these games, that they end up, becoming, the sort of odd side character who ends up taking an enormous amount of time with an enormous amount of content. I'm thinking of Shale and Dragon Age, Dr. Solus and Mass Effect. The comic relief who ends up getting a lot more attention.
But it's comic relief who is like comically their version of comic relief is that they're exceptionally bloodthirsty.
Yeah,
egging you on to kill everybody all the time, which is Shale. Honestly, that goes back to Minsk in Baldur's Gate, although he was like the good version and HK is expressly evil, or dark side, whatever, as a droid can be. And Minsk is actually kind of interesting there in that he's a good guy version of that, but he's just simple-minded enough that his solution to everything is a boot in the ass. HK just wants you to kill everything out of pure bloodthirst.
And contempt for humans. It's pretty delightful.
But it's filtered through that sort of like fussy C-3PO droid, which is
the vocal performance is incredible on this. The HK vocal performance is wonderful, like an all-timer in video games. And the conceit they have of having him sort of state his mood or the tone in which he's saying, like, irritated reply, master, that can't be what you want to do. That is such a great device. That is hilarious. They use it again in Mass Effect. It's so good.
They do. They recycle it exactly in Mass Effect, but it's so good with HK, where he's just like, evasive answer, master, I don't think that's what I meant at all. And
this is how you create a beloved character. It's so well thought out. I mean, all the characters in this are really well thought out, but they had so much imagination and creative drive in this character. It just spills out. It is a classic character of Star Wars. Like, beyond, just being good in the context of this game. This is, and he's not the only one in the Knights of the Old Republic games that is one of the best characters that has existed in Star Wars. And, you have the expansive time of a video game to develop and let it play out. But this is a spike volleyball of a character.
Absolutely. And they did kind of a riff on this with K2SO in Rogue One, which was one of the, more beloved characters of the Disney Star Wars era. Not as good as the video game version. No. But, no offense, Alan Tudyk also does a great vocal performance there. And I think that character works. It's an archetype that works especially well in Star Wars because you have these droids that they're not entirely human, but they're more or less human. But they can get away with a little more than a human could, as far as I guess same with Bender and Futurama.
That's kind of the vibe. Actually, it's very much Bender.
If Bender backed up his destroy all humans talk, that's what HK-47 kind of is.
How much is there about the relative sentience of droids in the first game? It gets a little fuzzy with the first and second. It's something they don't really delve into in the way they could. You get the sense, but it's there, right? Like, it's all kind of there and investigated a bit in here. Any idea in Star Wars gets poked and prodded in this game.
That's the nice thing about having a big, deep game like this is that, there can be little side quests or optional content that does dig into all these types of things. That's going to be a more central thematic element in the second game.
Right.
But which we can't do these both at once. That's got to be its own thing.
We'll do it. 6 months from now, whenever.
Yeah. We're still on Tatooine here. So you go, you either kill your way through the Sand People encampment, or you make a deal with them to do it doesn't matter exactly what the deal entails. You can get them to guide you out to where this star map is hidden in a cave. What the lair of a crate dragon, which you then have to kill. You find your first map as you're coming out of there, and this will happen when you're. There's a place on each of the individual planets where this encounter will happen, but it's just whichever the first one you go to is. You'll be ambushed by Callow Nord, who is this bounty hunter that you clashed with back on Terrace, the first planet. He's so goofy looking, but he's sort of he's I guess the Boba Fett of Knights of the Old Republic, in that he is a bounty hunter that bothers you for a while. So you have a little boss fight with him, and you take him down. And then you're off to your second planet. For me, that was Kashyyyk. You go there, and that's obviously the Wookiee homeworld. And you realize that Zalbar has got a lot of backstory stuff you're going to get into here with his family, sort of the ruling family of this village that you land at. And he's been exiled by his brother, who has overthrown his father. And, Zalbar sort of wrongfully accused and driven away out of his planet. And as you're searching, you have to go down. So the Wookiees all live at the top of the canopy of these giant redwood trees, that are 1,000 feet high. You have to go down to the surface of the forest, what they call the Shadowlands, and that's where like the dungeon levels are. And you're searching for the star map down there. You come across your final teammate, which is Jolee Bindo, who's an old hermit Jedi, sort of in the Ben Kenobi mold, except more genuinely eccentric than Obi-Wan Kenobi. Kind of just an old crank.
He's kind of the guy that Obi-Wan Kenobi is pretending to be.
Yes. And he's kind of a lovable old crank, but and
Major, it's such an important character too.
Yeah, I mean, he's
to the game. This is underrated. Okay.
He's abandoned the Jedi, but not joined the Sith. Obviously, he just doesn't like. He thinks Jedi are stodgy and kind of dumb, and so he embodies the sort of gray Jedi thing that fans like to talk about, where he's not really dark side, not really light side. Except, I think he's a really good version of that because he is light side. He's just not dogmatic. He's not religious, but he's spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not. Yeah. Gray Jedi is, I guess, the classification that most people give him. But yeah, he is just a good guy, I guess. Isn't he?
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is it's people. I think, at least I've seen fans get sort of twisted up about this, where that okay, the Sith are obviously bad because they're the dark side and they're all about just evil for evil's own sake, and then the Jedi are also flawed. And so if you're thinking that's halfway through, it's like, well, maybe you can be too good. Maybe that's a problem too. And it's like, no. And then the solution is to mix the two up somehow and have a little bit of both. I'm like, no, I think you're kind of missing a thing there. It's being too good is not a problem, and you can't be better than being too good by being a little bit evil, being evil sometimes. That's not better than being good all the time. But you can be less dogmatic about things. You can sort of.
The game itself kind of bears this out too, just in the way it is built, because you are not particularly rewarded for playing the middle. I mean, the morality is its own conversation, but this is a game where you have to, if you want actually to get the most out of it, you should be all good or all evil. Playing the middle does not work, which is an interesting commentary on Jolee, perhaps. But I don't think it's intended. I think they're just new at morality systems, I guess.
It certainly is that. That's something they're going to struggle with even in other contexts where there's not such a clear binary morality system set up as the dark side and the light side of the Force.
Well, the thing is, it is fun in this game to play those. It's really enjoyable to be all good or all bad in this. Unfortunately, I don't know that binary system works in every game, and they kind of figure that out, I would say. But the first Mass Effect, where you can be a really good space hero or a really big asshole space hero, at least in this one, you can straight up be evil.
But there are like gameplay rewards for maxing out how big of an asshole you are.
Yeah, to the point where it's
Or
not
for
worth
being a
not
goody
doing
two shoes.
it. You have to go all in, or you're getting less of the game. It feels like.
And what they figured out later on, I think, in later games, is the influence system is better than the alignment system, where depending on how you act, certain ones of your teammates will like or not like what you're doing, and as you can get different levels of content with them depending on whether they hate you or love you or in between. It's still a thing where you're probably not going to maximize any content by having everybody think you're just okay, but
yeah,
you can. It allows you to play a little more organically, to just like follow your whims as to what you want to do in each situation, without being like, well, I guess I got to take. This is clearly the most light side choice, so I got to get the points.
Yeah, I mean, the downside is it puts you on a rail with that. Like once you kind of pick your side, it just benefits you to continue doing that. So it does not become a choice thing after a certain point. It just becomes, this is how I'm playing the game. I don't think you get to the influence system without going through the morality system first.
Yeah,
like I think you have to do this version of the game before you can get to the more advanced thing later. And of all the games where they do pure morality, good side, bad side, I don't know if there's a better one than this. The original KOTOR.
Star Wars is better suited to it than any other mythology that you're going to be working with.
Certainly. But this one, it really does feel like a complete story and a very different story if you pick one or the other. Like the good side of this and the bad side are distinct from one another in major ways.
Yeah, so this is the thing I think with all these RPGs like modern day is the just openness of things, and people want there to be. I think a lot of people would put it more in terms of you want your choices to have consequences, and what that means is you want there to be 10,000 different ways this story can play out, depending on which, you're making these choices 3 hours in versus these choices 12 hours in versus these 36 hours in, and all those things need to add up to different permutations. I think that's it's sort of a nice idea that a game or a game series could have endless replayability because you could switch little things and have big different outcomes. But really what it boils down to in Knights of the Old Republic, and I think this is probably all you need, is that there are two basic pathways that tell two very different stories with a lot of the same beats. And I think that's good enough that both those are sort of like satisfying routes to take and make enough sense. Because if you're trying to make it so that anything can happen, there can be like, there's no rails on the storytelling, then it doesn't feel cinematic anymore.
Yeah, it flies in the face of a complete narrative. Like if there's just large parts of the game that you are not able to access because of choices made, I mean, that's kind of cool in a way, but it also means, that it's going to be a different experience for every player in a bad way. Like, that lots of players won't get the best of the game or the optimal experience. And that becomes its own problem and it becomes its own limitation. And I think that if you play the Mass Effect games enough, which I have, you start to realize there's actually not much difference. Like it feels very personal, but actually you're more or less experiencing the same game, no matter how you play it. That is not true in this case. This game is two extraordinarily different games.
Yes.
That feel thematically
it's only two.
Different. Yeah, but it is only two. They mastered two narratives. It's pretty impressive.
And I think
they work.
Yeah, I think that's good enough.
Yeah, for a 20-year-old game, it's amazing actually. But but it's also all we need in a way. Like
yeah, for me we're getting into Mass Effect and everything else now, but it's like
sorry,
I don't need you to accommodate like complete freedom of choice, because I don't need the story to make sense if I'm going to play as a schizophrenic lunatic the entire time. Like it's okay to assume that players are going to pick generally reasonable human responses to things and make the story reflect that. And that's fine. Hem me in to the fact that I am not just going to, try and behead my love interest on sight without having spoken a word. That's fine.
I mean, KOTOR does make it feel like that often enough. Like they are such binary choices. It's just like, oh, Oh, yes, I'd be happy to help you. Do you need some money? Or, you deserve to be poor. I'm going to kill you now. Like,
Right.
it's that extreme. And
Yeah,
it's,
the two sets of rails, it can be pretty ludicrous, I think, if you're switching between light side and dark side halfway through the game.
oh, yeah,
Back
that
and
would
forth,
make,
like,
it'd be impossible to make any sense of it. Because that's part of why it doesn't work unless you're doing it all in one way. It's not a
right.
consistent character otherwise.
Yeah. But anyway, we should keep going here.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, you hit up with Joey Bindo. He's sort of this old crank. He's kind of a mentor Jedi figure for you that comes along. He helps you find the star map on Kashyyyk. You, well, I don't think you have to, but you probably, if you're not a monster, redeem Zalbar with his tribe, drive off his evil brother that was working with the evil Zerka Corporation slavers that were exploiting Kashyyyk, and you drive them off the planet. Zerka Corporation, by the way, another great like addition to Star Wars lore that this game completely made up, as far as I know. But they are like sort of the company from Alien,
Yeah.
you know. But really, you're going to explore this environment in a greater, more leisurely degree. I think you sort of need that. We need some private sector villains in Star Wars
Yeah, yeah.
that aren't just
Economic villains. Yes.
yes, that's not either the evil empire or the mafia, but it's yeah, good stuff. I like that the addition of them. They're in both games.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we've got two more planets left. Your choices are Manon and Korriban. We're going to go to Manon first.
Yeah.
That is the one planet that is completely invented for this game that had never appeared in anything
I
prior,
guess
as far as I
so,
know.
right. Is Korriban its own?
Oh yeah, I don't know about that. I feel like it's probably mentioned in some EU stuff. It feels
Probably.
very
It feels
EU.
very EU. Manon feels very original.
Yeah. Manon is a neutral planet inhabited by the fish people we were talking about earlier, and they grow colto, which is the like healing property plant, which is a big asset. So both the Republic and the Sith are bending over backwards, trying not to piss them off because they are neutral Switzerland in this big, galactic world war situations going on. So you go there, you have to sort of like tiptoe around the local authorities. There's a big murder mystery plot there. There was another optional murder mystery thing back on Dantooine. So we got a couple of those in this game. It's another thing that I like in theory, including something like that that's not just go here and kill this thing as a side quest. I also like on the second playthrough find those parts very tedious. So
Yeah,
I skipped them a lot.
Manon is a bit tedious, but it's also it's the biggest one. I feel like
Yeah.
that or Tatooine. It's probably Manon. I mean, maybe it's just the time-consumingness of walking around in that bathysphere suit underwater for a while. There's a lot of extra things to do, but you really do get immersed in it, and it is. I mean, each of these planets really does function as its own mini narrative within the macro one. Each one kind of, like the Kashyyyk has this, sort of Shakespearean brother feud about chieftain and ruling. Tatooine has the Sand People thing, and yeah, Manon has the most. It has all sorts of weird fish people politics, and yeah, it rewards you for really diving in, for really getting involved in it. You're going to get more out of it the more time you spend talking to them about their ways. And
you have to sort of like you're in the city where you land and everybody's at first, and there's sort of like a mystery to unravel there as to what the exact nature of the evil Sith plot is to corrupt the youth of Manon.
Right.
And then once you do that, you find out that the star map is on the ocean floor, so you have to like take a submarine down to this research station on the ocean floor. But you get down there and everything's killed, and it's sort of a survival horror vibe that they're going for there.
Yeah, it's like a 90s like underwater sci-fi thriller, of the abyss, Leviathan kind of like deep rising kind of underwater monster fest for like 3 hours there. It's great.
Yeah, I like it. And there's a giant like enormous kaiju shark that's
Yeah, it's so
roaming
good.
around outside
I
that has
didn't remember.
driven all the fish people crazy and turned them into like 28 days later zombies.
I didn't remember any of
So,
that coming back to this game. All that came as a big surprise to me when I replayed this. I was just like, oh my God, I forgot all this was in here. This is great stuff. And it's so outside of Star Wars, it feels like, but consistent with the world. It's so cool.
Yeah, it feels entirely like appropriate as a
Yeah.
just a corner of Star Wars we haven't done yet. Um, so you go down there, you have your choice basically of you can kill the giant kaiju shark that is also like sort of a religious, like mythological figure of fish people's history,
Yeah.
and poison the healing kelp deposit or whatever, which is obviously a dark side path, or you can find a way around it and do the good guy thing. But either way, you find the star map, and you're done. Oh, coming out of your third planet, you're going to get attacked again. This time by Darth Bandon, who is Malik's apprentice, sort of like the Darth Maul figure of this game.
Yeah.
And so you have a little boss fight there. Now, as we're leaving the third planet, we get attacked by the Sith and captured by, pulled in by the tractor beam of their big flagship, which is captained by Saul Kareth, the other secondary villain, I guess the Grand Moff Tarkin of this game, who is also like Carth Onassi's nemesis because he ordered the bombardment of Carth's home planet that killed Carth's family. So we're taken captive here. You can hide one of your teammates on the ship when you're captured. It's nice that you get to pick whoever you want there, and
that's fun.
Sort of mount the rescue mission with whichever single squad mate you chose, and they all have different skill sets to do it with. Now we get to the sort of big twist. We escape, we kill Saul, and as we are just about making it to our ship, Darth Malik himself shows up, and we fight the bad guy for the first time. This is definitely the end of Empire Strikes Back, because we also get our big reveal here, which is that he reveals that, in fact, your player character has been Darth Revan all along. His former master that was thought dead, it turns out, survived the attack that we've seen the flashbacks to, but your sort of mind was damaged, and Bastila took you back to the Jedi Council, and they like gave you a memory wipe, more or less, and set you up to like be Jason Bourne, but to try and like put you right back on the straight and narrow path. And as this, you get this reveal, you have the fight, you escape, but Bastila is captured by Darth Malik, and that obviously upends just about everything.
This is this the best plot twist in the history of video games? I mean, I think it is. I mean, I think the only possible thing I would put up as a contender would be BioShock. Has a real good one, but
that one maybe was hyped up for me too much.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, BioShock just doesn't work for me as well. The first person vibe of it, I don't know, the first person perspective is not as conducive to storytelling, I guess. I mean, I'm just programmed to accept third person perspectives as the proper mode of storytelling, and so to have a twist land properly. The only other twist that rivals it for me, and it's entirely because I was of a very tender age when it happened, but it just totally floored me, was Final Fantasy VI. When the world ends halfway through the game, and then wait, the game's only halfway over. Like, but I thought we were doing the big boss fight at the end of the game, and like, oh no, and we lost, and the world ended, and we're gonna keep playing, and that I think that's a good one. Fucking absolutely brilliant.
That's a good one. This one though, I the weight this hits with, I just explaining it, it's hard to get across how effective this twist is, how seismic it is within the context of the game. It really throws you for a loop. It has the same effect of Darth Vader as Luke's father. I mean, it is the only time Star Wars as a whole has ever kind of managed to match that moment for me.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to keep circling back to just, crap on the sequel trilogy, but God, compare this to I Am Your Grandfather. It's
right.
it's night and day. I mean, it so clearly like evokes that I Am Your Father thing, which is, you know, the greatest twist in movie history.
Right.
And it's like structurally you see it all there, but it's not a pure repeat of that.
Right.
It's somehow more personal than just, oh, the bad guy's your dad, the bad guy is you. And it fits within the video game context so perfectly.
Yeah, this is making a real benefit of the medium itself in the way this is revealed. It wouldn't, you know, it's one of those cool meta things where you just realize, oh, I've just been playing this because it's a game. I'm going from the, you know, this spot to this spot, and I don't really know why. And then when you find that out, you're like, oh shit, yeah, this whole time I was kind of programmed to do the thing, and it's just, I took that as I'm playing a video game, but it was a narrative choice. It's great stuff.
I was a total blank slate at the start of this game, but I accept that because that's how, when you start a video game, they want to create a blank slate for me to imprint myself on. But also I was a total blank slate who's also the most special boy in all the universe, who's the best at everything, the best at fighting and racing and Pazak, I guess.
You just I accept that stuff. You just think, well, it's
video game stuff.
Yeah, this is how
because video games are power fantasies. That's like you're not playing a thing so you're not playing NBA Jam so you can suck at basketball. You know, of course I'm going to become a Jedi because I bought a video game where I could become a Jedi, and of course I'm going to be the best of the Jedis because why would I want to be the fourth best Jedi? What would be the fun in that? So you don't question these things because they seem like video game tropes, but then it fits really perfectly with this twist that you were on rails this whole time because the Jedi Council and Bastila were steering you through these steps, and you were getting, you know, plot convenient flashbacks here and there, and because it was convenient for the plot, but also because that it was your own history, your own memories that were coming up.
And it's why you had such sway over your team. It's why, you know, why they take this and run with this in the next game. But like the reason you become such a great leader is because that was already an innate thing that you were. It's, you know,
you had already led the armies of the Republic to victory in World War I. And then you turned to the dark side and became the Nazis and started World War II. Is essentially what the backstory is here.
All right. Hey, so we just got to the big twist. All right. So yeah, we're gonna make this a two-parter. It's a two-part episode, and we're gonna keep rolling with this. Knights of the Old Republic on return.
It was time for a big twist.
Yeah. So that's the surprise of this episode. Is that we're not done talking about it. Okay, so thank you, and we will come back, and we will finish this conversation on Knights of the Old Republic, the original. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.